You're listening to the 2D podcast. It's an NFL podcast, is what it is, folks. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, talking all things NFL tonight. If you catch us via the podcast later on in the week, we do stream live, usually Tuesdays, 9 p Central, 10 p Eastern time. We'll talk some quarterbacking, the young quarterbacks on center stage this opening weekend of the NFL preseason. Is Trey Lance going to be a bust, whether he stays in San Francisco or goes someplace else? Is Jordan Love going to be better than people think? Are they feeling the love in Green Bay? Anthony Richardson was named the starter in Indy. Good idea? Bad idea? DJ Moore had a big catch and run from Justin Fields. Is this going to be what he needed? A little more talent, a little more big plays around him. Bryce Young shut out by the Jets. The young quarterbacks, we'll discuss it. Also, Joe Burrow spotted running. What does this mean for the Bengals and where they're going? Are they just being cautioned? Is he going to be ready for the season to begin? The Jets have had some problems on the O-line. They didn't have any problems with the Carolina Panthers, and they've signed Dalvin Cook. Does that give them all the pieces they need to make a championship run? Zeke Elliott goes to the Pats. Is this anything more than a footnote? We'll talk about it right now on the Too Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Too Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Too Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Too Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Too Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome to another edition of the Too Deep NFL Podcast. Talking quarterbacks here, guys, to get things started. We saw a lot of the youngsters get their first go-around. Last one to go on the preseason docket was Trey Lance. I don't get it. I don't get why there's so much negativity around Trey Lance. For a guy who didn't play much football, it's amazing how he stinks. And we'll get to Anthony Richardson. 13 college starts, throws a pick, and looks okay at best in Indianapolis. But he's God's gift to the quarterback spot. Why all the negativity around Trey Lance, and where do you think it ends up, Jeff?
Well, it's a couple first-round picks that what cost of getting them to San Francisco is part of it. Other part is Brock Purdy is there, and he was the guy who took them to the NFC Championship game after Lance and Garoppolo went down last year. And look, there's always going to be – I even wonder if there's a little bit of a blowback because of he's from the same school as Carson Wentz. And you know how Carson Wentz's career started, and then it went south, and it's never really recovered. But I'm with you. I think it's – for a guy, we knew he didn't play that much football coming in. We knew that it was going to be a bit of a project. We knew that he had some skills that were really intriguing, but he was going to take some time to figure things out, and nobody wants to give him the time to do it. And so, yeah, I've seen the national people on ESPN taking shots at him, and I don't think it's his fault. I actually think if he'd be better off if he got dealt somewhere else, had a chance to start over with a really good quarterbacks coach. Kyle Shanahan's really good at that too. But I just think he needs a new surroundings and a chance to just play. And I think if he plays, he'll be fine.
Eric, why do you think there's, all those reasons are great reasons as to why? Anything beyond that than some of the stigmas that are hanging around him?
I think Kyle Shanahan's reputation as a quarterback whisperer is incredibly undeserved. Like if he was a quarterback whisperer in 2017, when he was going into the season with Brian Hoyer as his quarterback, he would not have traded the second pick and then taken Solomon Thomas at 3 instead of Patrick Mahomes. I think if he was good at identifying talent, he would not have done that. If he was good at identifying talent, he would not have been disappointed that they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo and not given him the chance to sign Kirk Cousins the following offseason. If he was a good evaluator at quarterback, he would have stuck with his convictions and drafted Mac Jones over Trey Lance because that's the kind of guy he prefers. My issue with Shanahan is and there's a lot of coaches like this. And in fact, Sean McVay won his first Super Bowl by allowing himself to deviate from this. But there are the genius coaches like the guys that are puppets for them, right? That's why Shanahan loves Kirk Cousins, because he's going to do the steps and he's going to do like all this kind of stuff that he wants him to do. And he cannot live with quarterbacks who are a little bit deviant from that, like Trey Lance. Now, the issue with Trey Lance is we just haven't seen him play a lot of football. And for the most part, the reason he hasn't played a lot of football is not his fault. 2020, he didn't cause the pandemic. 2022, he didn't want, I'm assuming he didn't want to get injured. And 2021, they had Garoppolo in the reins, and everybody who said that was his development year. So I get a little, we all look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's the exception to the Shanahan rule, right? Every time that they've lost 10 games or more, it's because they had to start Nick Mullins or they had to start CJ Beathard or somebody like that. And I'm a little bit I'm miffed at this Lance thing because I do think he has talent. I hope they trade him to Minnesota or some team that needs a developmental quarterback because I think that he could thrive somewhere else.
Yeah, I listen, and I think isn't he the perfect candidate for the Steve Young treatment, the guy that got had this high pedigree. Really, they didn't give. In this case, it's not that he's playing with a god awful team; it's that they're just not playing him to get him out there. I mean, last year the guy threw 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, or in 21 he threw 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Right, and then last year he's hurt.
He played in the monsoon the first week, and then he got injured in the second week. It's not necessarily fair to evaluate him off of last year either.
A 97.3 passer rating. I mean, the QBR is really low. I get it, but if you can't take that and work with it, then shame on you. I do think that this is, Brock Purdy's we're sold on Brock Purdy right now to where you don't even open up the competition. I mean, you can't get this wrong. He can't go someplace else and be a star and have Brock Purdy be, I don't know. Jeff
we forget that Brock Purdy was better as a freshman at Iowa State than he was as a senior. Brock Purdy turned his career upside down. It makes more sense than right side up.
Yeah. Are you buying Brock Purdy, Jeff?
Well, I'm buying him in the sense of he's going to do what they want in that offense, given what they have in that offense, which is distribute the football, get it out quick. As Eric makes a valid point, doing what Shanahan wants done. And my issue with Trey Lance watching the other day in that preseason game is that he's not playing instinctively. You can tell he's playing to try to be something that his coach wants him to be. And I just think we live in a world now where so much of what the really smart coaches are doing with young quarterbacks who are raw talents, let them run around. Let him play to his skill set. Let him be. Look what Josh Allen was in his first year. Look what Justin Fields was last year. What Jalen Hurts was 2 years ago. It's okay to be that and then figure it out. But there's so much riding on the 49ers right now. I think they feel the weight of having such a talented roster and not having been able to cash in over the last 4 or 5 years. And so Brock Purdy it's ironic because Brock Purdy is the safe choice when Trey Lance was the home run swing. And now they feel a lot better going with the safe choice because at least they can play the way they want to play.
Isn't there there seems to be this epidemic? We love the athletic quarterback. We don't care that he hasn't started. So we go draft him. And then we immediately run from him. Jordan Love, who we're going to talk about here in a second, is that guy. Trey Lance is the guy the next year. And then this year it's Anthony Richardson, who is getting all the love right now, but I can't wait to see them go running from him when he has some mistakes here very soon. We'll get to Anthony Richardson in a second, but Eric, why is Jordan Love, any different? The Packers are, to their credit, giving him a shot. They didn't put the 5th year down. They came up with a kind of creative way to give themselves a little bit of, lock him up in case he's great for one more year, but not be too tied to him for too much if he stinks. So they're not sold on what he is. How much, joy should there be in Green Bay about Jordan Love taking over the reins.
Well, it's certainly speculative, but I think it is different than in San Francisco, right? Because the Niners have like championship aspirations, and I think that is, Green Bay. It's a little bit different in that they were, they ended up being 8-9 last year, didn't even make the playoffs. They trade Rodgers. That, I think, for many, you look at the win total right now, 7.5 on the Vegas betting market, like on the markets, like they're not considered to be that good. So the Jordan Love thing is less of a risk because you have less to lose. And I think that's the difference between Lance, and that's again why Lance should get the Steve Young role. He should go somewhere where there's either he can be a backup for a great team, or he should just go somewhere where he can try to be a starter, like like Sam Darnold did in Carolina or something like that. Baker Mayfield in Carolina too. Like, to me, I think that's the eventual fate for some of these. And Love, I like Love. I think he's got a lot of arm talent. I think he colors between the lines, all that kind of stuff. I think he'll be good for Green Bay, but it's a different thing. I think Green Bay has lower expectations than San Francisco, and hence they're able to play with the higher variance player in their mind.
Sean Clifford is a 5th-round draft pick out of Penn State. Okay,
No.
Let's see what I agree.
Have you seen Sean Clifford play? He's been around for like 7 years.
Can I make my point?
You can, but we will soundly reject it.
That's all right. Here's what I'm getting at is he had 26 pass attempts. Jordan Love had 10. He was 7 of 10 for 46 and a touchdown, and they went, yeah, that's all we need to see. That's it. We're good. Like, can they really be like they're acting like he has in his career, he's attempted 83 passes. And they're like, no, don't get him hurt. Like what? I don't get, why not get him out there and play him?
Well, I feel like the Rams would have when they had Trent Green, they kind of probably wish he wasn't playing in the second quarter against San Diego in 1999, although it worked out for them. But like, just because a guy's unproven doesn't mean you want to expose him. Like the Packers, he got to start. In 2021, he got to start against the Chiefs. He was terrible. He got to play against Detroit. He was better. Last year, he got to play in Minnesota. He got to play against Philadelphia. They have, and this staff is the same. So they have a eval on Jordan Love, and I don't mind. 10 attempts is a lot of preseason game. What did Pack at 2?
Well, are we really making the comparison that situation's the same?
Well, I think both teams don't want their quarterback injured.
Well, nobody wants him injured. Like that's. I mean, listen. I object. Like, this is, I guess, no longer an imitation league, because Aaron Rodgers doesn't win shit, and he doesn't play, and everybody imitates Aaron Rodgers and doesn't play their quarterback. Patrick Mahomes wins MVPs and championships and plays in the preseason, but nobody imitates that. Why is that?
Well, look, I think that if you go around the league, there's a lot of people who aren't as crazy about the preseason games anymore. And some coaches and GMs will tell you they think they get more to joint practices than they do the preseason games, because you can control more stuff and you can script things and you can figure out how you want to match people up. But going back to the larger question about Jordan Love, I feel like in a weird way, Aaron Rodgers did him a solid, because the way he left town, not just with the way they finished last year, but just all the antics, all the acrimony. I feel like Jordan Love just being able to play and being a good soldier is going to earn him a lot of love in that town. And I also feel like they've learned from the Brett Favre situation that when, people forget this now, but when Aaron Rodgers took over, there are a lot of people. I remember Tom Jackson saying, I don't see it. I don't see this guy being able to be what Brett Favre was and deliver. And I'm not sitting here saying that Jordan Love's going to be their next Hall of Fame quarterback, but I think to Eric's point, I think there's a lot of things he's been doing behind the scenes that have been encouraging for them. I expect him to play a lot more, probably in the second preseason game, and a lot like the dress rehearsal game of yesteryear when they had 4 games. But I don't think he's going to go out there and throw 100 passes in the preseason to prove anything to anybody. I think they already know what he is. And to be honest with you, I think Matt LaFleur is a lot more excited about coaching him, because he was always butting heads with Rodgers trying to get him to do what he wanted to do.
Jordan Love will color between the lines. Rodgers is an artist, and it comes with all the artistic issues.
I guess what I don't get is like the knock on. Well, you got to remember this guy. I mean, how many times do you think we're going to hear LaFleur say, "Well, you got to remember he hasn't played a lot of football." We hear that all the time, and then they don't play him football games. Like that's what drives me crazy. Is that like, okay, if they need reps, then get them reps. I understand nobody wants to get a guy hurt, but I mean, Jesus, if you think your team is that crappy that if we put him on the field, he's definitely going to get hurt, then give me your whistle. We got to go some other direction. If you can't scheme a little to protect the guy and at least let him get out there and have a few reps. I mean, Jordan Love has played literally like what? Again, and I'm not going to, his games played is 10 games played in the league, one start. Overall, he's thrown 83 passes. I mean, he's basically, and then what did he play? Like 9 or 10 games in college? The guy's played the equivalent of like 11 games in 5 years. How can he not need to play?
It's a fair point, but I'd also say I don't know what you're getting out of. I don't know how long the ones are out there for the Bengals defense, but I'd almost bet you that he stopped playing when their one stopped playing, because I don't think you're getting anything out of it if you're going against a second string defense. Now, you may say he's throwing the football against another opponent, but ultimately that's the real benefit, is facing real talented first string top flight talent on the other side of the football.
I don't know. I mean, listen, I'll give it up because I'm a dog with a bone right now that just won't let go of it. Yeah. But I second or third, he has not played football.
Yeah. How much did Mahomes play in the first preseason? I don't think he was out there for more than a couple series.
But he's played football. Jordan Love hasn't played football. That's what I'm. And Mahomes, he does always play. Where Aaron Rodgers doesn't play at all. He plays a little bit, and he'll play close to a half in the second game. Maybe they'll go different now that
that's what I'm saying.
Year 6. But he plays a half, and then he usually plays a quarter. So I don't know. We'll see. The 2 Deep NFL podcast is brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. If you've got parking lot problems, they've been making those disappear since 1994. Don't risk accidents, liability in your parking lot. Make sure it's distinct, brightly striped. They can handle any and all aspects of parking lot construction to any kind of maintenance you might need. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Let's talk about Anthony Richardson. He was shocked, Jeff, to be named the starter. I mean, I guess we had to get that out of the way. That couldn't even wait till the end of the preseason. Thank God that got settled. That was clearly a Shane Steichen decision, right?
I'm guessing not. I'm guessing the owner might have had something to say about it. But, yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what their game plan was going into the year. I'm sure they wanted to make sure that they could get him comfortable. But, Jim Irsay has a way of doing things. Had wings up for Gann. I appreciate that, Matt Rowland. But, yeah, I definitely think Jim Irsay probably had a lot to say about this, because he picked the coach last year and he's been biting with the running back. So it only makes sense that he would weigh in and say, let's not fool around with Anthony Richardson. Let's get him out there. And part of that, I would guess, is because he had Andrew Luck and he had Peyton Manning. And both those guys are playing year one. And whatever kind of patience he hoped to have with the situation, regardless of how much Anthony Richardson has played football in the last, 4 or 5 years, doesn't matter. I think Jim Irsay probably wants to have his QB playing because his running back's unhappy and it's a headliner. It's going to be – if you saw him play, it's going to be rough going, but I hope he figures it out.
Eric, again, the copycat league, 13 games Anthony Richardson has played. That's a lot less than Patrick Mahomes, who the Chiefs decided needed an apprenticeship year. Nobody seems to go with that. They might start for about 5 minutes, and then Kenny Pickett plays. They might start for a few minutes, and then they throw him on out there like, oh, yeah, we're just going to give him some time. I guess it was with Jordan Love. We've mentioned him. He has sat back there. But how surprised are you that Anthony Richardson's already been named the starter?
I'm not that surprised. I mean, I think when you draft a guy 4th overall, that's the expectation now. And for every Patrick Mahomes, there's like a few cases where it doesn't end up working. And like you think about the Jordan Love deal, it's like you have to sign a $20 million, fifth year option sight unseen almost, to your point. Same thing with Lance, that kind of thing. So I just don't know if people see the value in sitting anymore. And the Colts are going to be bad. And the thing about the Colts is they have the third easiest schedule in the NFL. So they can be bad and still be competitive because they're playing other teams who are bad. And then thirdly, they could also do the whole thing where, Jonathan Taylor comes back. You have the quarterback. Like I was watching that game, linebackers do not move when Anthony Richardson hands the ball off. They're scared as hell of him running the ball. So like there is some things that they can do there in this copycat league that I think could be beneficial. And so like I'm more choosing to look at it this way. And again, don't laugh, but like he has probably as many games as Cam Newton did out of Auburn. Now Cam was the best college football player of all time that 1 year. So it's a little different, but from a pure like experience standpoint, that there is precedent for a player with just 1 year of experience coming in and starting. I mean, Mr. Trubisky did as well. Like there is precedent for that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Matt said most guys are getting drafted into a situation with no quarterback. Chiefs were fortunate they had Alex Smith. Well, isn't that what Gardner Minshew was brought in for?
That was the idea.
was to like take a little heat off the kid. I mean, like I think it's going to be horrible. I mean, I don't think Anthony Richardson should be on the field this year.
I think most teams. I haven't done an official study of this. I think if you look at the teams that have sat quarterbacks and the ones who have thrown them to the wolves, I feel like the ones who have sat, by and large, have had more success in the last 10, 15 years than ones who've been playing.
But Jeff, isn't that just because they're more successful teams to begin with? I think back to Bortles, right? Like when Bortles was the third pick, and remember that because of the Manziel documentary. But Bortles was the third pick. They tried to start Chad Henne that whole year, and he was so bad that in week 3 they're like, all right, what's the point, right? Why Bengals had Kitna in front of Palmer, but that was an 8-8 team, right? Like that, yeah. They were okay. I think that it's hugely, about kind of what you were before you got there, I think. And the Colts are barren right now. Like they don't have that much talent. So, I mean, I guess, throw them into the wolves, I guess.
Yeah. It worked out for Brady. They weren't a bad team when he got there.
Yeah. I mean, Brady was a 6th-round pick. I mean, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Bledsoe had just signed the richest deal in NFL history. So
yeah, Jonathan Taylor is around now, at least making it look like he could be part of the equation. That will help Anthony Richardson to have the strong running game. But man,
Oh, it's ugly.
It's going to be really ugly.
Well, and the bad part about it, it's a carryover from the way last year went when they got rid of Frank Reich and had Jeff Saturday running the team. It's just there's so. I mean, again, he's an owner, so I got to be careful. But it's like the way they're operating is if they can just snap their fingers and get back to where they want to be quickly. And it's just you have to have some level of patience with this kind of stuff to have it go the way you want to. I agree totally with you. 13 starts in the last 4 or 5 years is not enough to. I mean, you could break a guy really easily.
Yeah. I like Anthony Richardson's talent. I think he's a better passer than he's given credit for, but I don't think anybody's wrong when they talk about how raw he is. And raw in the NFL can get some big mistakes. Yeah. You get guys pick sixing it the other way, and that crushes a guy. Then you start being checked down, Charlie.
Justin Fields was a 3-year starter at Ohio State, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but they to the point, they tried to sit him, and that team sucked. So they were like, what's the point? Herbert was weird because they were trying to sit him, and then some doctor in San Diego, stabbed Tyrod Taylor. But he
played a lot of football though. He was a senior when he came out.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, Anthony. The funny part was, do you guys remember when Cam Newton did preseason? I remember playing fantasy that year, and everybody was like, oh my God, this first-string offense for Carolina, all they're doing is handing off. Cam Newton looks lost as a passer, blah, blah, blah. You better draft D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart for your fantasy team because all they're going to do is run. And then Cam lit the world on fire week 1 against Arizona and like the rest of the year.
I thought you were talking about the regular season. I'm like,
no, like
400 yards in his first 2 games.
Preseason, Cam Newton was like like throwing bubble screens all preseason. And everybody, when you read all the talking heads, they were predicting that he was going to suck. And then he came out and like lit the league on fire.
This is a pretty good one. Alex Smith got ruined early on. I mean, he didn't come back from playing then.
John, that was a Jim Harbaugh special to resurrect him.
Yeah, but it worked. But Matt makes a good point. Trubisky was actually pretty decent year 1, and then backpedaled from there. And I don't know if it's because they super protected him, and defenses said, "Okay, we see what you're doing now," and it was time for him to make some plays, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's where he started backing up. But the Alex Smith thing, that's a pretty good case for he could have used a little time watching. The whole Ohio State Urban Meyer offense thing is a scary proposition. I think C.J. Stroud looked awful. Can we agree with that?
Yeah, he struggled.
I mean,
Blitz got him.
That was about as rough as it could be. I mean, he looked. It's like, who put the high school kid back there?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's a perfect example of somebody who's played with a lot of talent and now is realizing that that's just not enough. Like the other guys are good too, right? When you're throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison and Chris Olave and Jackson, Smith and Jigba, all these guys who, have been first-round picks in the NFL.
Stroud will never play with a better supporting cast than the one he had in Ohio State.
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think it's going to be rough with CJ Stroud. I think Davis Mills is going to be starting by week 4. I think they're going to be like, "Ooh, we screwed this up. We got to back off on this."
You don't think Stroud is the highest? I feel like Stroud is the highest floor. At least that team has tackles like Tunsil and Howard, who didn't play. My issue with Thursday is, why is Stroud playing and your tackles aren't playing? When the guys never had, you watch DeJuan Jones is the PFF, love fair now because he's gone all this time with no pressures allowed. DeJuan Jones is blocks out the sun. And that was your second best tackle at Ohio State. And you're out there with 2 slappies and you're like, hey, let's go play a Belichick defense. That was the one. That's a red flag for DeMeco Ryans right away.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not sure what the plan was there. How about Bryce Young's performance against the Jets? Where's our level of concern getting shut out by the Jets?
Well, I think you're talking about facing one of the best defenses in the league, maybe the best defense in the league if they really hit their stride. And so that front four is going to give a lot of teams fits. It's very hard to play against. Sauce Gardner played in that game, right? I didn't see the game. Sauce Gardner played, didn't he? I know he didn't play in the first game. I'm assuming he was out there because most of their.
If he did, he didn't play long, and he didn't play long enough to make a tackle.
Yeah. So, but I think it's just that's a heck of a front four. They've got 8 legit pass rushers on that defensive line for the Jets. I think it was an eye-opening moment for him. But I think what Carolina's doing, and I think what the Texans are doing to a certain extent, is smart in that they're trying to build teams around these guys and not have them be saviors. And so I imagine what you'll see a lot more in the start of the season for Carolina is just a lot more conservative offense and trying to get him comfortable and trying to make sure the run game works and that he's throwing, nothing's thrown at him that's too hard for him to handle, and they're playing with their defense. But yeah, I mean, I think the Jets are going to do that to a lot of people. They're going to make people look stupid on offense.
You still believing in Bryce Young for this year, Eric? We were both pretty high on them winning the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, it was the least inspired effort in the preseason week 1. I would say that the Panthers, it looked terrible. Even to the point where they had a positive play, and then the guy that got the interception got tackled by Tim Boyle of all people. That was a rough game. I think Young looks fine though. The game doesn't look too fast for Bryce Young. I'll say that. And that team is going to be very well coached. That was why it struck out to me like a sore thumb, because that team has one of the best new coaching staffs that a league has seen in a long time in theory. And I mean, it was awful, like collectively, and I think that hurt Bryce Young, of course.
Yeah. He's tiny. I was up there last week, and he's a small guy. It definitely jumps out at you, his size.
Yeah, he did that, and I've heard that from everyone who stood next to him. Is like, oh wow, this is a small man. They're going to have to protect him for sure.
Yeah, almost like Shaquille O'Neal next to him.
Let's talk about Justin Fields. 3 of 3 for 129, a couple of touchdowns, a lot of catch and run. But I mean, listen, they finally got it right around him, Jeff, to where he can shine beyond just with his legs.
Yeah, I mean, as they said, what the average depth of the passes he threw, of 3 passes were like negative 2.4 yards. Didn't throw a pass beyond the line of scrimmage and ended up with 129 yards. I think you take that all day long. But I mean,
but I don't think you can live by it all day.
No, you can't.
And can you hit DJ Moore in the wrong knee before he like? Can we pause for a sec? Did that defense look like a high school? Like DJ Moore doesn't even look like he's running fast, and he's like.
That's what I was about to say. I didn't know DJ Moore was that explosive. I thought I've seen him play, but he looked like Tyreek Hill out there with the ball.
I mean, that defense was either a bunch of players that'll never play, or DJ Moore is sneaky fast, because that was a weird. Because he had no momentum for one, because Justin Fields threw it to the wrong side of his body and like made him like twist and all this stuff, and then he just dusted everybody. It was an impressive play for him, not obviously Fields, but.
I like a couple of these. Max says, I can't believe every offense hasn't discovered running 59-yard yak plays are the way to go. Field type is so weird. By the way, warm handoff, that's tremendous. But field type is so weird. I'm with it. I don't get it. Like you just mentioned, like even the plays, like they weren't even good passes. And yet, like in Chicago, I really don't have a problem with them not taking Bryce Young and trying to trade Fields because of the size thing, and I get that. But, like, I still just don't see it with Fields. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to click.
Well, Fields in college was, like, almost exactly opposite of – with one exception. In the pros, he's been inaccurate. In college, he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks ever.
Because everybody was freaking high school wide open in that offense. The superior talent against inferior foes. By the way, you're a Big Ten guy. There are about 4 decent Big Ten teams, right? Like Nebraska's been
there's
trash.
like 20 of them now.
Yeah, but
Oregon and Washington.
But how many of them are any good? Rutgers isn't any good. I mean,
well, especially the Big Ten East. It's like it's obviously Michigan, Ohio State, and it's like vibes. Penn State maybe, but
Big
like
Ten
the rest of
West.
it is.
Yeah.
But even Wisconsin has completely regressed. They fired their coach. Nebraska's been lost for a decade.
Since I voted to put us in the Big Ten.
Michigan State backed up. Like going out and handling business in the Big Ten. Who cares? Like
Indiana,
but the issue was,
and
what are we getting excited about here?
Well, the issue was, and this is for like new, analysts and stuff, is like his sack to pressure rate was like really high. Like he did not know how to handle pressure without taking a sack or without taking off and running. And that has been, exactly where he's been in the NFL. Like if he doesn't escape pressure and run, he's a joke. Like that's the hard part. And I don't know if you can, that's something that's fairly stable year to year as well, I'll say.
Yeah. We'll see. I do like some of the talent because I like Khalil Herbert. I think he's a good back. Eric
Darnell Wright's a good tackle, I think, out of Tennessee.
I think there's some good things that they're doing there, but he needs to be the right guy at the center of it all. The right place for you if you've got parking lot issues, if it's your business, whether you own it or manage it. Gann Asphalt and Concrete has been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Get your seal coating now before the weather turns. When it gets cold, it gets, it's not a possibility. Weekends are booking up fast as well. So book right now at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. Keeping your parking lot looking great, keeping it safer, keeping your liability down. A brightly marked parking lot makes it so much easier for your customer. So get to GannAsphalt.com right now. Joe Burrow was seen running. I remember covering the playoffs and watching Patrick Mahomes at the ankle. hop down the stairs to show that it was okay and skip a step to show that it was okay. Was this is that what we got? Look, I can casually jog in a straight line, or do we think no, he's going to be ready to go for the first week, Jeff?
I am betting he's out there in week 1, and that just reading between the lines of what Zach Taylor's been saying about, they've been very ambiguous about the timeline. And I think if it was serious, they would be more serious about it. I feel like Joe Burrow is like Mahomes is the kind of guy you probably have to keep him from himself. You have to be, defend him in that way. But, when I saw him running, a friend of mine, Bridget Connon, shot the footage of him. He looked good doing it. Now, he's not evading, a pass rusher. He's not being chased by TJ Watt. So you don't know how that's going to look. That's when you tend to hurt your calf when you're doing more explosive movements. But the fact that he's moving around is a positive. And they've got 3 more weeks to get him ready to play football. So if you weren't seeing him doing that, I'd be more skeptical. But I think he'll be out there in week 1.
Eric, are you shocked that he is not following Jamar Chase's medical advice of, take a few games off? We need you for the stretch run. Listen, that's what I did. He said, take those early games off. Those don't matter.
Yeah, I think looking across the field at Trevor Siemian and Jake Browning is maybe a little motivational for Burrow, and having to play the last 2 AFC title games in Arrowhead because you messed around at the beginning of especially last season, and lost to Cooper Rush and Mitch Trubisky and then Jacoby Brissett. I feel like that's motivation, right? I think they want to host Kansas City in January as opposed to play there. So that I think is the motivation, right? Is this idea of like, still haven't gotten over the hump. I know Bengals fans like to talk a lot of shit to Chiefs fans, but you still haven't won anything. And I think Burrow feels the pressure a little bit.
Eric keeping the rivalry alive here.
So salty.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that Burrow, look, I have the utmost respect for Burrow because Burrow believes every word I just said. He's not a let's hang a banner for giving the going 3-1 against Kansas City last 2 years. He's I want to win a Super Bowl guy.
Yeah.
And he looked, and they started last year slow, right? They went 0-2. They got drilled by the Browns midseason. They lost, they lost a close one to Baltimore. They had to grind out the season at the end, and they, much like the 2021 Chiefs, they finished the year the best team in the AFC, but they ran out of gas in the title game. Like this is a thing, right? So I think that he wants to stack up wins so that he doesn't have to play in Buffalo or Arrowhead next year.
I get that, but there's also being smart. You mentioned losing to Pittsburgh. Losing to Dallas is not that's a pretty good team.
Yeah.
They were
both
starting
those
Cooper
games
Rush.
were like both those
there were
games
3
were like
backups on that L in the right-hand column of their ledger last year. It's losses to Mitch Trubisky, backup, Cooper Rush, backup, Jacoby Brissett, backup.
I think both those losses were like 3-point games, right? They missed field
Well, in
goals or
both
blew
games
something
they
at
got
the end.
behind big, and then they came back and forced overtime and then got beat. Yeah, but I don't like if you come back on Cooper Rush, we're happy for you. But I'm not gonna like, I don't know.
Just for the record, they lost 23-20 in overtime to the Steelers. They lost 20-17 to the Cowboys. They lost 19-17 at the Ravens, and then 32-13 at Cleveland.
3 backup quarterbacks in that list.
I guess I don't get the point you're making. Like they aren't that good.
My point is that the Bengals would have played the first half of the season last year like they played the second half. They would have been hosting the conference title game. That's my point. And I think when he goes and like when you want to host the conference title game, don't you? You don't want to throw out 0-2 again.
Of course you do. But
if you start Trevor Siemian, you are going 0-2. The Browns are good enough to beat you with Burrow, let alone Trevor Siemian.
I actually don't think Trevor Siemian's that bad. As
Anthony Richardson is a wart on the ass of the NFL, but Trevor Siemian's okay.
As backups go, no, Anthony Richardson's just green. He just hasn't played. But Trevor Siemian, as backups go, is not the worst thing in the world. But I object at the whole premise of like, well, because that's how the season went. If you played it 1,000 times, all 1,000 times, it'd gone exactly like that. I mean, They lost some close games. I mean, good. That's what good. I mean, good football teams don't usually get their ass handed to them 7 times. They're like, well, just won their day. I mean, that's kind of what happens to good teams. They're in all the games, and then a couple things don't go their way. The other team plays out of their mind, and a couple of moments go against the good team, and that's how they end up with a loss. They don't all go 17-0. I mean, your point's valid. Listen, if he doesn't play, like what do you think they do with at Browns, Ravens, Rams, at Titans?
I think you start 2-2 at best.
Jeff?
3-1.
3-1. Okay.
I think he's, but worst case, he misses the first game. I don't think he's missing any games, but if it may be one at the worst, at the most.
Do you tell him he's sitting if he wants to play? And the doctor's like, it's not there yet.
You hope. I mean, but it's like it's going to end up being a 6-7 week deal. I mean, Dak Prescott just had a calf strain and missed 2 games in the middle of the season.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the New York Jets. They get Dalvin Cook. Is this the final piece of the puzzle, or is this like just we got some cap room? Aaron gave us money. We got to go get it. Is this an Aaron Rodgers signing again? Because I don't know that splashing around cash on a running back is necessarily the right way to go, Eric.
I mean, the Jets are like the gambler who is all in ish on one bet, and then they have like $4 left in their pocket, and they just parlay all the rest of their bets together. Like Dalvin Cook is inconsequential to this team for the most part, but at the same time, he probably is good enough to, if this team were to be really good, he's probably a really good second running back to Bryce Hall, right? So, I mean, Dalvin Cook is not changing the Jets' outcomes at all. But the Jets are so all in that, I mean, if you're Joe Douglas, why do you care? Like, you don't care. So you buy into Dalvin Cook, right? If this season doesn't go well, you're all fired. You lost 6 straight games to end last year. You were 7-4 and in the playoff race, and you went belly up in the second half of the season. If this doesn't go well, you're all fired anyway. So why not just go all in on this year is kind of my point.
Yeah, but you can go all in by signing somebody else.
But who's available that's going to add value to them right now?
Well, I don't know that it's now. You could have signed somebody before now. I mean, I don't know. Is Dalvin, like, I actually think the kid, Abanikanda,
the running back, that he's got some spunk.
I think he's good. I don't think Dalvin Cook's any better than he is really at this point.
Are we really having this conversation that a guy's name that you can't even say is better than a guy who's had 3,000 yard seasons?
I can't remember names and I can't say names, but kid went to Pitt. He's like 20 years old.
Not knowing the guy's name is not distinctive.
He averaged like 6 yards a carry, and in this last game, I'm like, listen, I'm a nerd. I do the dynasty football and everything, and I zeroed in on this guy. I think he's really good. He was 12 carries for 56 yards. He caught the ball. He catches the ball, 3 catches for 31 yards. At Pitt, he was super productive. Like I said, he's only 20. And so, and maybe he turned 21 now, but I don't like young legs win. Listen, Dalvin Cook is not making them worse. Let me be clear about that. But my question is, like, could the money have been spent better shoring up a guard, a tackle, an edge rusher, a veteran? There are plenty of veteran, defensive linemen out there as well.
And plenty of those.
They'll get on the field though.
Oh, they rotate all those guys. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but one, I feel like Bryce Hall just got cleared to start practicing again, right? So you don't know where he's going to be at. Generally, running backs off ACLs not named Adrian Peterson are not going to be, that reliable coming off that type of injury. But I think it's I don't think he's inconsequential. I think he's going to be a huge part of their season. Because I think as much as Aaron Rodgers was combative with the Green Bay Packers, I guarantee he appreciated Aaron Jones and he appreciated Jamal Williams, and he began to value the running game in ways that he didn't have to before. This team's got to score 20 points to win games. They're that good defensively. And so if you give them one more weapon a guy who can catch the football out of the backfield, a guy who looked super explosive last year when they beat Buffalo, when they came back against the Colts. Like, he's a home run hitter. Man, I'd take him.
I
for
just
$8
think-
million
I just
for
think
1 year,
that-
I'd take him in a heartbeat.
I do think like running backs and linebackers do offer like some. If you're already kind of all in, like that's the time to spend is like in August when it's been picked over and there's like the Eagles just signed like Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack. Like that's the time to sign linebackers that are kind of whatever guys, So I'm not as offended by it. I think Cook is washed, but if they have metrics that say differently, like
You think he's washed?
Yeah. Dalvin Cook was like one of the least efficient runners in the NFL last year. And his like on-field play speed has declined and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe the shoulder surgery helps him but like last year he was shied away from contact a lot. He was not a great runner. And that
What did he run
I
for
stand by
last
that.
year?
Over 1,000.
Yeah. That's
but
the
like-
that's the bad Dalvin Cook. I'll take that all day long.
Yeah, you give a guy enough carries, he'll get 1,000 yards.
Listen, I've seen some of the metrics that Eric's talking about, and they don't like Dalvin Cook. 1173 on 4.4 yards per attempt. 8 touchdowns rushing, catching the football. He was 39 catches for 295 and 2 more touchdowns. Like, I think he's still a fine back. My point is, like, if you have 95% of him already on your roster, could you improve your roster by spending the money elsewhere? That's the question.
Not this time of year, I don't think.
Okay. And that's a
So yards per touch for Dalvin Cook the last 4 years, 5.5, 5.4, 4.9, 4.8. You're looking at a decline, pretty monotonically. I know that, yeah, he's obviously, I think as a secondary runner, I'm not that offended by it because, Breece Hall will carry the load. And I think actually this is very good for Dalvin's career. But you even look at yards per carry, 5.0, 4.7, 4.4 the last 3 years. So it has been a decline for Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. Okay. Is the offensive line going to be the problem, though, for the Jets, Jeff?
It could be. A lot depends on. I think they felt pretty good about Mekhi Becton in that preseason game against the Panthers. He's certainly a key factor here, but they got Billy Turner and Max Mitchell. Last year these guys got hurt. And so the big question is, can they just stay healthy? And if they can stay healthy again, someone like Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to sit back there for 5 seconds trying to find somebody to throw the football to. The ball's going to be coming out quickly, and when you add the weapons that he has in place, and it's going to go to people who are going to be able to do something with the football. So I feel like people underestimate the middle of their offensive line because those guys are pretty good. Elijah Fair-Tucker is a first-round pick. Connor McGovern is a guy they got from Dallas who's a pretty good player. It's the other guard's like a first-round pick too. I can't remember who he is, but I think he's pretty sure he was. They got like 4 first-round picks on their offensive line.
It just never seems to be that good.
Yeah. Well, again, Fair-Tucker is a really good player.
Yeah, I listen, but Mekhi Becton can't stay on the field. That's one of the first-round picks you're talking about. He hadn't played for 2 years.
Yeah.
I do think that this team does, from Jeff's point, like I agree with Jeff's point. This team has 2020 Tampa Bay type of potential where you sort of like the quarterback kind of gets his legs, coaching staff, all that, and then you look up in November and you're like, everybody's still healthy. Defense is amazing. Defense has been playing well, and this team could catch up to people, right? Like I do think that's true. I just think the average person isn't asking the question is, can Rodgers play well for the Jets? Because I think if the answer is yes, to Jeff's point, everything else is going to be good enough.
I agree. Let's finish with this. Zeke Elliott, last year, less than 4 yards per carry, did punch in 12 touchdowns, did that for the Dallas Cowboys. He signs with the New England Patriots. Will this register on the radar screen at all, Jeff?
No. I mean,
we know Eric's going to say no, so you're the only hope for Patriot fans.
Yeah. I mean, again, you have to go back to LeGarrette Blount and whatever it was, 2014, 2015 to find the last time they had an impact running back. They do running back by committee there. He could be value in short yardage, goal line, but that's the guy who's clearly washed. I mean, that's there's not a lot left of him, and I feel like he's just going to be more part of a rotation in that offense than a player. No, I think a good rotational player. He's a good pass protector. He's a good receiver. He's a smart player. He runs hard, but I just don't see him being a difference maker anymore.
Eric, I think I know where this is going to go. Anything from Zeke Elliott you see in here?
Yeah, I think it goes the way of Chad Johnson, Albert Haynesworth, Joey Galloway. I think it goes that way, which Belichick has been willing to do in the past, more than it goes like Corey Dillon, or LeGarrette Blount. I think that Zeke is a flyer here, and it doesn't Ramondre Stevenson's a better player than he is, so. It's tough for me to see him making that big of an impact. He is a good pass protector still. That should help with Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part, is that he can protect the quarterback, because he didn't do much catching the ball last year. So I don't know how much is there, but I think
he's a fumbler too, which Belichick does not like.
Yeah. It's so good. That should be a lot of fun watching the two of them go at it on the sidelines. We can at least look forward to that when it's all said and done. When it's all said and done and your business needs help with its parking lot, there's only one place to go: Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Online at GannAsphalt.com. No commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Call today before the weather turns cold. 816-484-3338. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Consumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Two Deep NFL Podcast.